ancient skies. We call on the winds, the mountains rise. By the sacred rules, we stand as one. Fingers of our work begun. Mighty war, with hammer in hand, strike down the foe, protect this land. Odin, All-Father, seeker of wisdom, guide our souls to the sacred rhythm. Frigg, queen of the hearth and home, with love and grace make us whole. Turn the trust with your iron might, guide us through the darkened night. Hell, the mistress of life and death, show us the path with every breath. Freya, goddess of love and war, we honor you now and forevermore. Feru, Urus, Tulisas, we call the runes, we seek your cause. Ansus, the Rhino, Canas, we say, guide our path, light our way. Lagos, Hagalas, northeast we sing, our spirits rise on the winds of spring. It's our Jera, for we trust, in the runes, in the laws we must.
Welcome back to the Greyhorn Pagans Podcast. This is going to be a very, very interesting one. This idea came up when Zerilath and I, we did our weekly rune reading, and he's been called a shaman so many times and has been annoyed about it equally many times that we were just like, you know what? I actually know a couple shamans. Let's get, at least one on to explain to everyone and, kind of what is a shaman? What are the prerequisites, if you will, to be a shaman?
and for the record, I just want to say, I love you, Stein. Definitely not annoyed would be the word I'd use, just because then that would mean that, that Ben on Unchained Brain was annoying me by calling me a shaman. He was honoring me, right? I've been very honored by being called as such. But I think that we also have been playing fast and loose with it because of the New Age movement in many respects. And that movement's been around for way too long for it not to have successful infiltrations. And this all started, and then this was perpetuated because I picked a fight on X with Jake Angeli.
The Q shaman, who is anything but a shaman, but, thankfully...
And Admiral, let's not forget an Admiral, psychic super soldier from The Men Who Stare at Ghosts. This was his original story that he told people before the FBI was not on his side.
Well, he's everything, pretty much.
He's a cheerleader. He's more of a jock playing it up.
Well, let's start with the definition of what a shaman is.
Please, that's why we.
I think the shaman.
Why I asked you.
I agree. I agree with your definition in that the shaman, and the title the label, has been used rather loosely, and I guess I've always taken it to mean, and certainly the spirits who have communicated with me have told me that it's outside every other definition of a spiritual leader that there is. So, in other words, you're a shaman when you don't fit into anything else. Now, that's another very loose translation. But shamans, I know, I think of it from my practice and from what I do and what I get from where I go. A shaman is, first and foremost, we're healers. We bring energy from the spiritual realm, and we help our fellow humans and our fellow life forms to absorb that energy and to heal themselves and to learn how to heal themselves going forward. So it's a one and done kind of thing. We teach you how to heal yourself. So we bring that knowledge, that intellect from the spiritual realm through our spiritual guides and provide it to our fellow human beings. So I think first and foremost, we are healers. Secondly, I think our next role is teachers, in that we provide with communications that we can gain associating with the spiritual realm, spiritual entities. We're able to gain insight and a level of intellect about particular subjects that can help our fellow humans, our fellow life forms, develop into their full potential. So we're there to teach them how to reach the spiritual realm themselves so that they can grow. And I think the final aspect of what I do is I look at myself as a conduit. I'm a conduit for spiritual energies to communicate with those here on the physical realm and to help us to grow, love, to learn, to be who we are meant to be and not who society has kind of pegged us to be. I think, with healer, teacher, and certainly this conduit, facilitator, if you will, I think is primarily, and then it really goes, then you can obviously go to traditional shaman, whom are very localized, very regionalized, very specialized in what they do and how they do it and who they communicate with. And then there are other shamans like myself, whom we kind of communicate with, although I communicate directly with my ancestors, I communicate with other spirits as well. And so I'm allowing them, again, this is the conduit part of my life, that conduit part of my existence. I think the idea of shamanism is in the definition realm outside of all the other definitions of spiritual connection and spiritual association. Shaman makes you very different than, say, a minister or a pastor or one of those types, because we're not dealing with a particular story or a particular narrative. We're more open to all narratives. We understand that spirituality is much wider than most religions attempt to display and teach. Spirituality is such a much huger thing. And I think that's really where shaman come in. I qualify shaman, and certainly many indigenous peoples would have had medicine people. Further back in history, we can get all the way to my ancestors of the Druids of Southern Europe, where we really find more of a connection with nature and the wondrous of the universe and our existence versus following a narrative. So shaman are outside this narrative. So I think in 1,000 words or less, that's more of a definition of what a shaman is. But does a shaman, I think everybody gets hung up quite frequently. I have this conversation quite a bit on the label, whether we be a teacher, a friend, a lover, a cousin, a father, a grandfather, really matters very little. The label, people get kind of really spun up around labels. People ask me, what should they call me? And I say, never late for dinner is my favorite, because I have a girlish figure I have to keep up. So these types of labels, I think, unfortunately cause more division than they cause good.
Yeah.
How's that help with your definition of shaman?
Right, exactly. Because I've become quite a bit of a vernacular, kind of person, right? And looking at something and it's just, like I get bothered because we can't coincide and be helpful towards each other if we can't agree on the meaning of the words that we are using, right? Because if out there somebody says, I'm a quote shaman, you have to work harder to take in context, especially considering we're using shaman because it fits specifically that tag as the Germans who discovered the Siberians. It was Germans who named these Siberians. So they used from Xiaomain or something like that is what I read in the etymology of the word, right? So shaman is more etymologically connected to German, which is kind of funny to talk about these healers from Siberia that became the first standard in context of the use of the word shaman, right? And then we realized that all tribal peoples, these people who you just described, who you fit the bill and many others fit the bill. But typically, it's not everybody because it's hard, it's weird, it's got a disassociation effect, right? And I think that I can tap into all sorts of things, but I wouldn't say that it's because I've been initiated as a shaman and went through the things to earn shaman. Because I don't have I have my spirit interactions because I'm tuned in, but it's not the same like your relationship with them, right? But I think that that's a consequence of me being myself and doing magic.
I think to some degree, I recognize the point, and I do recognize that when one uses that word and we say, hey, yes, I am a shaman, and most of society will say, he's gone through this training, he did this big journey of arduous past, and he climbed this mountaintop to speak with the gurus that he knows all. But I think in that case, you have a lot of superimposing of many different models. You're taking the mountaintop guru, you're taking the wise elders, you're taking a lot of different. I almost want to use the word stereotypes, but that's not the word I'm looking for. But roles within society, and you're trying to plug them into this role. When we engage in our path of shamanism, whatever path, whether that shamanism be with my brothers and sisters of Mongolia, whether it be with my brothers and sisters in South America, whether it be many, many indigenous tribes that I interact with, the idea of this label called shaman, when I'm with the tribes that I visit with, people call me Mark. They don't call me, oh, look, there's the shaman. No, they say, look, there's Mark. He's tripping over something, inevitably, because that's what I do when I get out in the village for some reason. But I think in many cases, when I first left the church, I was a minister for over a decade with the Christian church before I found my path and came to where I am today. And as I was leaving the church, I really struggled with, people used to call me pagan. And it used to really get to me, because pagan, of course, being a Christian word, meaning you don't fit into fold. It's not a thing of itself, right? And then the same thing that we see applied with the word heathen. Same thing. It's a Christian word. It was assigned by those early adopters of Christianity to separate and segregate those who didn't want to conform or believe. So, when Christianity came into Scandinavia, those who followed the old gods and the old ways were considered heathens. Well, so were the individuals who studied the law of Islam. They were considered heathens. So were the individuals, the indigenous peoples who were living in Americas before the Christian settlers came. They're all heathens. So it was applied kind of this blanket thing. And to say that you're this or you're that or this other thing, no, that's a word coming from the understanding of the sender. It means nothing to me. The fact that you would refer to me as a pagan now, or a heathen, kind of funny, really, because it means that you're fully subscribed to some of these monotheistic practices, and I'm just not fitting in your fold. Same thing I see with shaman is that shaman is a term used by others to describe what I do. And it essentially, to me, it kind of means the same thing, in that I go to nature and to the old gods for my path forward. I don't refer to their narrative. I don't associate with their customs. I don't do any of that. So for them, I'm out here. And so they call me whatever. They can knock themselves out. As long as they don't call me late for dinner, I'm good to go.
Well, I think in a sense what it is that we're living by a code established as almost like, we're reaching back to the universal Or law.
That's an interesting way. But okay.
That's how I consciously feel like.
But again, you have to look at your labelism, or if that's even a word, if your labels, you have to look at the context at which is being sent from, not it being received.
The Greyhorn Pagans Podcast is proudly sponsored by Shop Reclaim Repurpose and their Hnefatafel set. That is Viking chess, a centuries-old 2-player strategy game that is easy to learn but rich with complexity. The defending player aims to escape the corner with their king, while the attacking player aims to capture the king. Hnefatafel is about outwitting your opponent and making strategic decisions based on the board's ever-changing conditions. This portable version of Hnefatafel, or Tafel for short, is perfect for history buffs, Viking enthusiasts, or anyone looking for a unique and challenging board game that can be taken on the go. Perfect for the upcoming holidays, of course. And with my code seen on screen now, which will also be in the description box down below, of course, you can get 10% off your purchase on one or more, of course, Tafel sets. Simply go to his website, shopreclaimrepurpose.etsy.com. Use coupon SteinfoxTafel for 10% off your entire purchase. Again, coupon code SteinfoxTafel, or go to the link shown on screen for 10% off. Thank you so much for Shop Reclaim Repurpose for sponsoring us. It means the world. Now let's get back into the show, shall we?
Yes. And that's why it takes so, like, that's why I got into etymology in such a hardcore way. You know, people like me have an excited disposition that want to share and talk openly and get conversation out, right? And so when we end up choosing a term for things, I like to try and make sure I've qualified things properly. I will say, like, we know this as paganism is the way I'll maybe phrase it, right? There's many ways we can frame this, but you know it as paganism. Let's just leave it at that because of, Christian stereotyping or whatever. And then I'll get on to the thing so I can freely say paganism and I've established the context, right? Because I'm still questing for the better word for it. And I am also plagued with this funny thing where my moon is sitting in galactic center in my birth chart. And so I have all these thoughts beyond words as a characteristic of having this placement. And so I've always had this mind of, like, I've seen this big freaking idea, this big picture, right? This whole thing, like, that's more felt and semi-seen in form, like whether it be a glimpse of the future or whatever. And then I have to stew with it forever because I realize that I am not of a high enough mind to express what's already there. Sometimes, though, I can have brilliant moments when I am reacting to something, because if somebody is addressing something connected to this weird, crazy behemoth of a good or bad thing, I'll have a simple statement that I can throw into, like, a comment about it. All of a sudden, a bunch of people will get a fractal sense of what I see, and I might even get feedback of new terms to help me open up my mind to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of my big aims in practicing magic.
And that brings up a great topic when we talk about energy management. That's what this all boils down to. It's really a matter of managing the energy within the mind. And when we learn, one of the first things that I know has occurred to me, and it occurred to me originally when back when I was in the Christian organization, we used to have this thing called prayer. And prayer, of course, to me, I took it much more seriously, I think, than many around me. But it was a personal communication between me and the deity. At that day, in those days and times, it was, of course, Yahweh, or they called it God by the biblical standards.
Mm-hmm.
But this prayer moment was a time that I needed to block out everything else and communicate. It would be very much akin like having a face-to-face conversation like we are here. I'm not thinking right now about changing the drapes or feeding the dog or doing anything else. I'm kind of focused on this conversation. That's what prayer is. I think as we step outside of the monotheistic practices and we begin to think about the rest, I call it the rest of spirituality, we get to this point where we can meditate, and we begin to do essentially the same thing within meditation, is that we're going to block out all of this cluttering, cloudy nonsense going on. Even if it's really good information, if it's coming at the wrong time, it's obviously not valuable, right? So both space and time have a context to the human brain. They don't have a context to the spiritual brain, but they do have one to the physical. So we have to kind of be able to organize things so that we can now bring these energies, these thoughts, these ideas, these concepts in at a constructive, valuable way into our narrative that then we are communicating. So it's all a matter of just focus. And I think meaning no offense at all, I think in your case, you have an enormous amount of intellect at your fingertips. And what you're having to do is just focus down and actually begin to catalog what you've got there. And then you can now produce a repeatable, honorable, authentic narrative that then it's easy to live by. So I think just focusing on that energy, keeping things at bay so that you can catalog things in your mind would help you immensely to create a narrative that then you can deny any negative energies when people say, hey, you're a pagan, or hey, you're a shaman, or hey, I get emails all day, every day. My staff, bless their hearts, they are always sorting through hate mail because I am not in the fold. I do not subscribe to all of that. And so we get hate mail all the time. And so we send back wonderful energies of love and acceptance and tell them, we just see things from a different perspective. It's like if you were to go out into the wilderness, go away from the city, and you looked at a mountain, and you were on a road when you looked at this mountain, you were watching this mountain, and then you parked your car and you walked many miles, and you looked at the mountain again, the mountain would look different, no? Of course it will. You've changed your perspective on the mountain. And it's by looking at that mountain from different perspectives, we now see the breadth of the mountain, right? We can see the entirety as we move further around. We see all the details and all the beauty that's contained within the mountain as we move all around it. And it's only then that we see the mountain, right? Because we've always just seen a little piece of it. And the same thing with our spiritual understandings is that when we're taught, when we're raised in the church, we have a fairly limited view of spirituality. Now, if you're lucky enough, you'll get blessed with these other energies that'll help you begin to expand and grow that perspective. And then you can start seeing it from other perspectives and other views. And all of a sudden now you're beginning to see a much bigger picture. And that's really where we find ourselves, I think, in the modern day, is that I think a lot of people, everyday people, what you would call normal people, are beginning to see a larger spectrum of spirituality. It does my heart so good when I arrive somewhere and the people there are like, you're right. If you just step to the left, you can see a much different picture than we were seeing from center. And yes, and they're really beginning to see the perspectives. I think the problem that a lot of people have, again, going back to your very first conversation, is a lot of people latch to answers. They want someone to do the work for them, right? And that's really what us shaman do, is that we're we're communicating with the spiritual realm. We're getting those feels from the spiritual realm. We're interpreting those, and we're helping our fellow human beings. So I find that people are fairly quick to have you do all the work and me just receive the benefit, right? So it's easy for me to call you shaman because why? Because now I can assign responsibility and accountability on you. Now, I don't mind it because I teach universal law. I teach the laws of spirituality, which are, go ahead, try to understand them. They're beautiful. They're wonderful. They're everywhere. They're in all things. So it's very easy. But I think people try, in many cases, I know I've been called shaman for a long time now. Have I had any formal shaman initiation? No. No. I overdosed on heroin in 1989. Does that qualify me? I don't know. But it has led me on a wonderful journey of learning and loving.
Well, actually, that's actually been one of my things because, I've looked at I've looked at a number of common threads about shaman qualification. I would say that, that might count as your near-death experience that opens your mind up to the channels that are a little bit unique for those that have that. Thus, you have that special spirit connection, right? Because that's my point. Like there's intense rituals they can go through, but events like that under the right circumstances, being the right person, right? Like these are the handful of things that I've heard, right? This is because what gives anybody the audacity to say that they are lying about this kind of a thing, right?
Right.
Because it's my point, like you talked about the difference, like than being a priest or a minister or whatnot, right? Because I think that there's a lot of people out there that can do energy healing stuff, right? And that's like one of their gifts or one of their talents they've chose to develop, but it doesn't make them a shaman, right? It doesn't make them with this element that you have right here, which that can work as a qualifier. That's enough for me on top of what would be obviously the authentic universal seeing that it works, which comes in the most when you're trusted with a problem, right? So do you need to do an exorcism because that'll get one family talking about your credentials for the rest of their fucking lives in gratitude and hopes that you have personal happiness and success, right? In whatever way, as far as I'm concerned, it's okay if a shaman makes money. It's just how they do it, because it's not really something you can count on, but because of,
I agree,
for authenticity, it might be something. That's my attitude. Do you think I'm off on that?
No,
that's what I have to say. I haven't made any money doing this.
Right.
I travel all over the state and I refuse to accept payments for what I do.
Yeah.
Because all I am is a conduit. I am no different than moving water underneath a roadway. I am no different. I am simply moving energy and knowledge and intellect from the spiritual realm to the physical realm. And so, to accept payment would be the same as to have one of your little drain ditches that go under your driveway by the road, and you see the water flowing. The conduit doesn't charge the water. Of course not. Nor does it charge the roadway. It simply is. And that is simply the way I have always operated. No, I have my staff, my friends, my beautiful, wonderful friends who have supported me. They are working in the social media thing, the magic of the internet and the like, to gain some finances, but that's not me. That's kind of them, if you will. I'm ultimately, I guess, the guy in charge.
Yeah.
So I guess I can take the credit.
It's just like I work in a warehouse right now, and I practice guitar a lot, and I enjoy what I do on YouTube. If any of those things bring me any kind of revenue, it would not be Well, it definitely wouldn't be from my main channel because I need to talk all sorts of shit on that channel. But my music channel, let that make money one day or something, because I originally wanted to be a musician. Then I got into conspiracy activism, and then just, all of that, I just said, oh, I want to end up learning about magic, because I said, like, okay, I see dark sorcerers doing evil shit, 9/11, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, all right, obviously somebody needs to be a white wizard around here, right? That was my thinking by about 2012 at that point, right? And so, I'm something, right? I just won't call myself a shaman. Like, I'll say I'm an Andromedan starseed. I know that much. I know I'm an empath, but then again, everybody can be a potential empath.
Great.
And that's the Zerilath, like what you just mentioned about the research that that you did. That's kind of what I was hinting at, was pointing at when I talked about the prerequisites, which is something that I would like to ask, well, both of you. That is, Zerilath, you've done a lot of research about it. Mark, you live it basically. Is there a set path, or like a checklist that you have to that you have to go through in order to well, I know labels, but sorry, in order to be a shaman, in order to be able to be called a shaman? Like Zerilath, you mentioned the near-death experience is one thing. Like, is it like everyone walks their own path and everyone comes to it in a different way, or is there like a certain set of like unwritten rules, like unwritten experiences that you have to go through?
I'll let research answer only, but just with one insert in that, yes, everyone who comes to realize their abilities will come to it in their way. Each of our spiritual journeys is unique to us, very unique. It's very personal. It's very intimate. And so to say that we're all going to arrive at some imaginary point in time, we're all going to arrive at that point from a different direction, using a different way, having experienced different events in our lives. So I don't think there's one way to, if you look at, as an example, one of my very best friends is a shaman in Mongolia. He's in Upper Mongolia, and a wonderful man. Love him every minute. He's a wonderful man. His initiation into shamanism, as he took over kind of for his tribe shaman, was essentially following in the footsteps of his mentor. He would eventually take over those rites and those rituals and those passages. I have another very good friend who is a shaman in Peru. His initiation into this shaman was different. He traveled a very different path. His path comes from a very checkered past, a very brutal path involved in drug war and all that type of things. He's traveled a very difficult path to reach where he's at. But I think when we say, in my mind, I guess this is my definition, is when you as a person surrender who you are, give that up to become this conduit, to open yourself to the spiritual realm, and irrelevant of anything else. You simply allow that knowledge, that intellect, that love to pass through you to your fellow life forms, and you have surrendered that former life, who you were. I think you have accomplished, whether you've gone through a formal initiation or this rites of passage, if you will. I think the ends, which is to communicate and to feel that communication, teach your fellow humans and your fellow life forms in general how to live their lives. their own way, I think you've accomplished this role of shaman, whether you pass the certification exam or not. I think your journey is now driven by your desire to provide this conduit.
And is that a journey that everyone can follow? Is it something that everyone can attain, or do you need a feeling for things? Like you already spoke, about spiritual awakening and a greater love and giving up who you are, out of that greater love and in effort of the greater understanding. Is that something that anyone can reach, or is it something for the special few to say?
I think everyone, the key word in your sentence is the word can. Because I believe everyone can do this. I don't see being a shaman as being any different than who I was before I became a shaman, other than this openness and it. All kidding aside, I believe that every human being is capable of doing this. I do, however, also recognize that many human beings put their blinders on. They don't want to see what's out there. They don't like seeing the unknown. They don't like seeing these things that don't fit into their definitions of society. They don't want to see that. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, struggle. That's the hurdle that we have to get over, is that we have to be willing to see in the darkness, to see out there where there is no guidance. There is nobody who is going to say, you're doing it wrong, or you're doing it right, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. We don't do that. You have to find your way, and you have to understand how to find your way. But I think everyone is capable. I don't think everyone will make the journey.
Yes. I think about that a whole lot, because big part of what I do with my channel is trying to get people to understand different ways of opening up to exactly what you're talking about, because I think that that's a standard to be raised, that we can do this for ourselves as a personal choice, and it takes away a lot more of the illusionary power that we perceive that these people have on top of us, because, we risk through our foolishness of those ways being caught in their nets, traps, and snares.
But you have to remember, when you think about monotheistic and particularly the main threads of monotheism that still exist, think about why they were implemented in the way that they were implemented. And you can research this. You look at the main reasons that particularly it came to Scandinavia and was as successful as it was in Scandinavia, is that it gave the ruling classes more finances. Why? Because we have to tithe every week, right? So now we're paying the church, which essentially, until you get to this whole separation of church and state, they're one and the same.
Class, I didn't fully hear that.
Well, flash forward, we had the rules of separating church and state. Supposedly,
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
Back in these days, when Christianity was on the rise, there was no such thing. The Anglican Church was particularly the British ruling monarchy. They were one and the same. So you got all the townspeople having to come every week and tithe. So we're building what? We're building the treasury, we're building the armory, all those things. But more importantly, and just as dangerous in the psychological world, is you get a top-down enforcement, where these church leaders would go to the ruling classes. They would convince the ruling classes that this is the way. And what benefit did they get out of it? Well, the ruling classes were now identified in the teachings of this new practice as being given to the people by the god. So what do the people do? The people aren't going to deny that. Here's a person on earth that they can protect. And so it was a methodology of population control. That's just how we keep populations in control, is we establish this. The king is the rightful gift to us from the gods, so we have to protect him at all costs. And so that's what you found as this particularly invaded Northern Europe, and certainly as it came across the ocean into the Americas, we find it abundantly clear that it was conform or die, period. Those were your choices. So that really programmed millions of people to think as every little intricacy that we have in the monotheistic practices was propagated down through the generations. And now you get to a place where, my a very good friend here in town says, magic is evil. All magic is evil. Anytime you're messing with the gods, that's not good. Not good. And I ask him, I say, well, how do you get out of bed in the morning? I sit up. Well, what do you need? What do you use to sit up? Well, I use muscles. Well, how do muscles make you sit up? They just do their thing. They do their thing because of biochemistry and bioelectricity. Energy. You move your body with energy. Why wouldn't you move outside your body with energy? More importantly, why would the outside of your body exist without that energy? So that energy is all around us. And we simply have to learn to harness it and to understand it to better our lives, to use it internally and externally equally. Prayer, spells, they're the same thing. They're just addressed from different perspectives. A prayer, I ask for, oh, gods above me, come and help me pass this exam, right? What's the difference between saying that and saying, gods, send the energy at which to pass this exam? There is none. There's no difference between prayer and an incanted spell. None.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of misunderstanding that's brought down by this generational misinterpretation of what the original monotheistic authors coined. And that's where I think you run into some snags when we say, I'm a shaman. Well, I'm a shaman. Okay. If you act like a shaman, if you behave like a shaman, you do shaman things, why aren't you a shaman? And who gets to decide if you're a shaman and you're not? Who makes that decision? It's not us. It's not the other shaman. We're chosen by the Spirit. Have you been chosen by the Spirit? Your actions and your words and the way you teach and the love you have for the fellow life forms on this planet tell other people whether you're a shaman. And if they feel like calling you one and you don't feel like one, maybe that's an intrinsic trigger that we want to go learn more, grow more, and bring in more of this energy that we can now establish love, harmony, peace everywhere we go, to every person we meet, every time. And that, my friends, is a shaman. Whether you call yourself one or not, that identifies you as a shaman.
Yes. One of the things that has been running through me with all this stuff is that a lot of the history that I read about, I look at it, and there were aspects of forced conversion during various conquests and kings who converted and things like that. But way before then, I think that we're looking at how the political winds changed, because there were a lot of places that they didn't have the same kind of threatening reach with Rome. There was more of a distinct interest in shifting. And that, I think, was because the higher ups that make the civilization work with the serfs under them, or the slaves, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The slaves were Christians because that was what was pressed upon various young people that were put into slavery. It wasn't just Christianity, because there was a time where there was a competition between basically the cult of Jesus and the cult of Mithra. right? And the cult of Mithra was much more popular in the Eastern Empire. And so the Eastern Orthodoxy and the Eastern Empire is where you get, the Christianity of the Slavs, aka slaves, right? After I watched the Northman film and I thought about it from the perspective of here's Christians, and every Christian character is a slave, right? And then these slaves get freed in an uprising from the beef of one fallen king line against a stolen king, right? A king's thief, if you will. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's a bunch of Christians that are now running free that either will go to a more Christian-like slave master if they don't know how to take care of themselves, or they're going to try and go do their own thing somewhere where they won't be persecuted out there in Iceland, right? And so these people eventually become part of the medieval body politic, right? We don't think about it because it's not a democracy, but there's always the element of the consciousness of the people's co-collective, right? Because, everybody has to believe, in Big Daddy King, Dad, that's the parents' padre, right?
And I honestly think that is also the reason why Christianity spread so much as it did, because Mithraism, I actually did a whole live show on it just a few days ago. Mithraism was a soldier's cult. It was very much a warrior cult. So, unfortunately, with all of them dying on the battlefield, the cult did die as well.
Died by attrition. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, slaves are numerous. Like, you can always enslave new people and just tell them, like, "Hey, you're a Christian now." Yeah. Okay.
George Patton said it best. You don't win a war by convincing your men to die for their country. You win a war by convincing the enemy's men to die for their country.
Essentially, how it goes, they say history is written with the victors.
Yeah, this is why I worked real hard to find the grift on the word Val, which does not mean slain, other than in context that, like the context of how you died was or the context in which you were valiant was when you died, right? But it's valor, it's valiant, it's value, right? That's Val. Every other Val in the Old Norse is in that context, except for Valkyries and Valhall. Then they're saying, all the slain, but then everywhere else it means of worth in some manner.
There are many. The languages are, as you know, challenging at best. So this is another, and you brought it up earlier. This is another real part of that shaman journey that we go on. Is that we learn to communicate with the heart. Unfortunately, this guy sometimes fails us. The mouth can't always be trusted. Our brain can't be trusted because we have the heart. We know that the heart manipulates sometimes our thoughts, our desires, our wants, and can alter what we're thinking and why we're thinking it. And it can sometimes take the most innocent of thoughts, the most beautiful of thoughts, pervert it and make it ugly and make it divisive and hateful. When in fact, originally, when we were thinking, it was in a loving context. But again, our heart plays a huge part in our communication, whether that be through this or whether it be just through our heart. So I think we have to be always be cognizant when we are vocalizing that we're congruent, that we're aligned head to heart, and that when we're speaking of those values that we have inside, and we're speaking from the heart. We mean everything we say. Is I think a part of. I think it's a part of our authenticity that will get us to where we want to be. And we won't get there without that.
Yeah. That's why I sit in meditation and I listen to the different streams of thoughts that run through my head, and it's just like, why did I just think this sentence or that sentence? Is this my voice? Is this someone else's voice? Is this someone else mimicking my voice in my head? right? Because, I might have, a spirit guide whisper a thingy, right? And then I have a more internal response to that thought, which felt much more like it didn't come from in here, right? And those are such crazy nuances, right? And it's Grand Central Terminal up here for like a half an hour, right? Of me in meditation, and it's better just not to fight it. You're just taking notes.
Right. Open ourselves. I always describe, when people ask me, describe meditation that I can understand what I'm supposed to do in meditation. And I tell them, I say, take your chest and dig your fingers in right above your heart, and then peel back your chest, open it wide, and allow those emotions to directly interact between the spiritual realm and our heart. And you can do this. I mean, it's a physical motion sometimes, just sticking our chest out and helping that, just to open ourselves to that, become vulnerable to those emotional passages of energy. I think this is really what we're trying to do in meditation, is we're really trying to push aside. Many times cognizant thinking brings in millennia of programming, of generational programming that we've been told, you have to do things this way, or you have to do things. No, just open it up and allow your heart to drive. Your heart is the way you're going to move forward. It's not your restrictions. Your restrictions are up here in your head. Your heart will drive you to where you need and want to be. So just, as you said, just let them come. Feel your way through the meditation, and you will get the most benefit, and you will get the most direction from meditation. So I see it's at 3:30 now. I'm deeply apologetic about being late, but I have to be somewhere in 15 minutes. So I have a hard stop.
That is perfectly.
No, I think this was good. All things considered, this was a beautiful conversation. It's an honor to have it with you, to meet you. I should have you on one-on-one on my channel when I can find some time. I'm nice and packed up with full-time work, plus a bunch of other things I'm trying to roll out. Like, I've made myself very busy over the next couple of weeks.
Well, you're in luck, because I'm traveling. I think I'm in town tonight. I'll be leaving first thing tomorrow morning. I'll be gone for, I think, 4 days, and then come back. And I think I'm here for 2 days, and then I'm going somewhere else. So
it makes perfect sense to me, right? Don't worry, it'll all be on the back burner. It'll coordinate when it coordinates.
Absolutely. The universe will guide it.
I'll make sure to forward the contact details with your approval, of course.
Absolutely. Our door is always open.
Awesome. Well, Mark, Zerilath, thank you both so much for this very enlightening conversation. I tried to get a word in here and there, but it was mostly about you two anyway. I'm just happy to be here on my own show. Yeah. No, but this is this taught me a lot as well, and I have much to think over. Mark, where may the good people find more of
as always, my website is the best place to start when you want to find me. My website, 2 different addresses, but I'll give you the easy one first, and that's NorseWhispers.com. And at that site, that's kind of the center of my universe. We do all of our posts there. We do all of the shows. All have links there. Ways to get a hold of me, contact information, all of that is all available on that webpage. That's a wonderful webpage. For those of you who do speak Old Norse, it sounds like we've got some Old Norse going on.
A little bit.
We can go Ulfhednar.com. And there you'll find the same thing that you find at Norse Whispers. It's I do the English version for those who don't speak Old Norse, and for those who do, of course, you can go to the AK for Alaska Úlfhédnar, which is, of course, who I am. So you're welcome to visit me there. There you can also get all kinds of information about me and and my message and information about how to begin your own journeys. And
Awesome.
I also do daily rune readings, so that's a good place to point people for those people who want to have runes read for them. I do a daily one just of general knowledge and general help to help people using the Four Winds layout, just to help them understand the influences that they may feel and how to deal with them in their life. So,
Are you elder or one of the younger Futharks?
I was the elder Futhark.
Me too.
It is. I'm kind of old school there. I believe that the elder Futhark was the original Germanic alphabet as it came into existence somewhere in the 150, but it also stems from Germania. It's not a Norse language. It's actually a Germanic. So it really comes from the Proto-Germanic kind of language, which makes it, I think, a little bit easier to follow. And certainly for me, it just rings more authentic to me. So I feel it much more deeper than I feel the other Futharks.
I feel the same way, but I think I see what's going on with how they constructed the others, and I think that they're all still working off the same purity, off the weird, right? It's using just different angles to make different things instead. And so, at the very least, some of those more unique symbols, I have no problem mix and meshing things that I think have pure energy.
Well, absolutely. And you get to the point where you're playing with bind runes and understanding bind runes. You're getting to some of that more complexity within. So, absolutely agree.
Yeah, I have a bind rune of my own design that I tattooed on me, but let's not drag this on too long. We're about an hour right here. You got to go.
Yes, well, I have to do the, the proper closing and all, and thanking the good people. But Mark, if you have to go, you have to go. You don't have to necessarily stay here for that. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being tolerant. I apologize for being late.
It's all right. I had this planned. I still wanted to do it. So thank you for still coming on, I guess. And of course, to all the good people watching, all the good people listening, thank you for doing so. This has been a great episode and an easy one for me. I didn't have to do as much. So yeah, remember to like, share, subscribe, leave something nice in the comments. Visit our website, www.greyhornpagans.com, where you can find everything from our merch to the Patreon to all the other tribes, groups, and communities that we associate ourselves with. All the sponsorship plugging is going to take too long, so I'll just make separate videos for that and edit them in afterwards. So yeah, with all that said, I thank you all. Have a good day, good evening, good whatever it is for you, and until next time, everyone, bye-bye.
This was yet another amazing episode of the Greyhorn Pagans Podcast. We thank you all for watching. We thank you all for listening. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you will be notified whenever we upload something new. Support us on Patreon for early access and for everything else that we do with the tribe, for everything else that we do with the podcast. Find us on www.greyhornpagans.com. For now, we thank you, and until next time.